G'day everybody, welcome back to Zero Access Footy, episode number 36, once again with the two usual hosts, Behm and Rhys, and we are very excited to get a look at the AFL 2025 draft. Our first look, a bit of an introduction guide, I guess, to anyone who may be regularly watching us. This is going to be your first look at what we're thinking about when it comes to the draft this season. So we've put the time in, our first time in a good while where we've really actually gotten together and tried to sort this all out. I think as the year's gone on, we've kind of gone with the flow of things. And
not we.
I have, yeah, okay. I'll take a lot of the blame for it. I'll take a lot, but we managed to get this one ready to go and sorted out. So we've got the 2025 draft coming up, and we're going to first off have just a small overview as to what the draft is going to be, and then we'll go into specifics through people who are much smarter than we are, have more insights as well, and we'll go through what they're saying too. So as an introduction to this year's draft, and be sure to point out anything that I've missed or that I say incorrectly, but this year's draft has been labelled a bit as a Noah's Ark draft in the sense that it is two clubs picking one after, picking twice before they move on to the next teams. West Coast have 1 and 2, Richmond have 3 and 4, and then you move to, I believe, Essendon have 5 and 6, and then Melbourne 6 is 7 and 8, which is just the way that it's. No, I've made sure that it's changed up because that's not what it actually is. Either way, that on top of the fact that we do have a bit of a compromised draft, or at least a very heavily compromised top 5 this year, with 3 of the top 5 players in this year's draft.
And 4 of the top 10.
Exactly. Being NGA picks and father-sons.
Yes.
In the top 5 specifically, those 3 are NGA picks. So those are Zeke Hewland and Dylan Patterson, both going to the Gold Coast Academy, and Dan Annable, who is at the Brisbane Academy. So Queensland is eating good. After their awesome, I should say, trade period.
I'm pretty sure we graded those two teams as the highest. Like, I think they both got A pluses out of it,
and I think
or at least A's.
It wasn't like excluding this. This was the reason they were such a positive outlook, especially Brisbane, seeing that they just come off a premiership, brought in more talent, and then have a top 5 pick coming in. But you could argue Gold Coast offseason has been better because of the fact that they've brought in so many necessary talents, as well as got continuous young talent continuing to join their squad. And so that ruins the whole Noah's Ark storyline to it, if that makes sense. But with that being said, Gold Coast and Brisbane don't have the number 1 pick. That one is going to West Coast. They will be starting with 1 and 2. Starting with 1 and 2, sorry.
That was a bit anticlimactic.
The set has been really misbehaving as of recent, but they have those 2, and it's from both finishing dead last on the ladder, as well as the compensation for losing Oscar Allen in this year's trade period. It is expected pretty consistently from the majority of the reports and the professional opinions that Willem Dersma is going to be the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
And he will more than likely go to the Eagles. But there is talk of West Coast shopping around their 2nd pick.
Yes.
We won't go too far into that just yet because I would like to leave that to when we start going into the actual drafts themselves. But to give you an idea, Willem Dersma is the big name, the one you'll probably hear a lot in the lead up from the draft to the start of next season, as the number 1 pick almost always is. Obviously, with Zeke Hewland being projected 2nd, he is pretty consensusly 2nd as well. So Zeke Hewland will be number 2, presumably, with Gold Coast having to match the bid.
There's always going to be questions about the bids because it's very dependent on how the team wants to go about it. Because there's been rumours that maybe West Coast would be interested in bidding on Dylan Patterson first, and that could then, who's Gold Coast other NGA player, and that could potentially force them to pay up even more than they would have been expected to, which maybe means one of them slides or falls to West Coast, in which case they'd be very happy with that.
Absolutely.
Because they're arguably, even though Willem Dersma is consensus number 1, I still think Hewland and Patterson have technically higher upside.
I think Hewland specifically because he's got that midfield defender type build that will go further into when we look at...
He's also extremely damaging by foot, which is what you want in the league right now with your players.
Yeah, so we'll get into that with the player profiles in just a second. But yeah, just want to add on top of that, some other talking points are Cooper Duff-Tytler. He was one that was originally hovering around 1, but he has now become a little bit of a straggler. You don't know where he's going to go. He was had a lot of talk during the mid part of the season, and now's at an interesting point. And the two front runners for him at the moment seem to be Melbourne and Essendon. So those are the main talking points, or the ones you'll probably hear a lot about as we get closer and closer to the draft day. So we'll wait and see what that ends up looking like. We'll also see here what teams are going to be trading up and down. So there's some more stuff in there in regards to trades. Obviously, we're big on the trade period and had our opinions there, but you can make trades with purely draft picks in this period, as well as what does each bottom 4 side need when it comes to who they're picking up. So there'll be some really obvious ones, like West Coast really can't lose wherever they pick from, presumably. Essendon, we could probably find ways to squeak in some necessary spots there.
You'll always
Richmond,
hate on Essendon anyway.
Yeah,
so
Richmond's got a very interesting scenario, though, this year, considering that they picked up so many rookies last season. It's going to be interesting to see who they pick up this season. And Melbourne as well, with a massive club turnaround. We'll wait and see who ends up taking the reins down there. But that is a small little overview of the draft for the year. Let's have a look, though, and get into some player profiles and a few things here and there in regards to what these players could potentially bring into these clubs. So the talent at the top end has been described as meager by Jasper Chalapa at ESPN. One of his quotes were...
Don't listen to ESPN if you want draft news.
I mean, that is fair.
That's all I'm going to say.
It's the only reason I've added that one in is because it seems to be a bit more of a broad thought regarding this draft.
I heard somewhere where if you were rating last year's draft a 10 out of a 10, which very much so seems, given how it was labelled a super draft, next year seems to be, being 2026, seems to be about a 5 or a 6. This year's close to a 0.
Which is insane. I think there will be a struggle. Like, will we see a Murphy Reed type show out this year?
There's no one at pick 17 that is anywhere near as talented as Murphy Reed,
and
nor is ready to play at AFL level.
Yeah, which is crazy. It's a bad year technically to be so far down, but at the same time, there are potentials. There are potential picks. Realistically, we're more likely to see a second-year player win the Rising Star this year.
Yeah,
Jagger Smith is probably ready to have himself a big season, I'd imagine. And we'll talk more
Certainly
about these guys. But let's have a look at specific players. I want to go through that for a few minutes because if we are to go and talk about these guys' impacts and where these guys will land, we kind of want to make sure that we know exactly what they're going to bring. So Willem Dersma, I want to go through first. He is the number 1 presumed pick.
Yep.
So the snapshot that I'm getting here from Rookie Me Central is he is an athletic utility who can play in just about every position on the ground with his dynamic movement and aerial ability. Is there anything else that you have been able to see that adds to this little snapshot?
A lot of his play throughout the champs and throughout the leagues have been predominantly off halfback, using his ability to see the play in front of him. He takes a lot of risky kicks, hits some of them, doesn't hit a lot of them as well. But as a prospect, that's sort of what you want to see. You want to see them being able to see those kicks rather than just not being able to hit them, because that's something you can develop. I think he's got the body, he's got the athleticism, he's going to be a freak. It's just whether that position at AFL level is a bit unsure. Although at West Coast, you can probably fit in anywhere.
I was going to say.
I don't think that's much of a surprise.
Because he's so expected at West Coast, it's almost like envisioning where he's going to fit in. I think I had seen through some Phantom Form guides that he's expected to be starting in a halfback role, which makes sense. We've seen a lot of fantastic midfielders get their start there. I mean, you think the likes of Dacos, I think, had his start on that halfback flank position because it just gets them involved with the play. And like you mentioned, with their ability to look up and find kicks and find players, despite them not being able to hit it as consistently as they could later on in their career, the fact that he's able to see him and probably get a lot more opportunities to see him on that halfback position just means he's going to improve quicker and quicker. So I think, considering where West Coast is going, with Harley Reid being that big bull in the midfield, Willem Dersma, I mean, he's like you said, he's got the body for a midfielder role. it's just going to be interesting to see, does he take the outsider linking role like a Dacos, but with a bit more body so he can lay a few more tackles, take a few more contested marks? It's looking really far into the future. But it's really exciting to know which team he's presumably going to go to and imagining his role
I
there.
certainly wouldn't compare it to Nick Dacos.
Well, obviously, because Dacos is a lot more of an outside
He's
player.
just a shit footballer.
No Brownlows. Same amount of Brownlows as Dersma.
Same amount of Brownlows as Jack Billings. That's all I'm going to say. That's all, both pick threes. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, but Dersma, of course,
Actually, no,
is the youngest. No, not the youngest. There's a lot of siblings in the Dersma family. But
X, Y, Z, and now W.
Yeah, exactly. So Willem, Xavier, Yasmin in the AFLW for Carlton, and Zane for North Melbourne. So there's been thinkings as to how these guys get together. At the moment, it looks presumably like it's going to happen, if it ever was to happen.
At Essendon.
At Essendon, exactly right. Because Xavier is playing at Essendon right now. Zane is on the outer at North.
And was rumoured to go to Essendon.
Exactly. And Willem, I mean, Essendon have the chance, technically.
I think they could trade up for sure.
They could trade up.
Onto a bit
and we'll
later.
get into that. Do we want to get into that now, how that could potentially happen? Or do we want to save that for...
No, we'll keep that for later.
Yeah, I think there's some really interesting points we can bring up sooner. Oh, sorry, later rather than right now as we're trying to establish each of these players. But Dersma, a lot of characteristics at 193 centimetres as well. He's got the height to really put on a show in the league for a long time. Another player that is really interesting, Cooper Duff-Tytler. I've mentioned his name already.
Yeah.
We can go through Zeke or Dylan or Dan at any point. Let me know.
I think it's more so when we don't, like, as players, there's questions about who they're going to be, but we know where they're going.
Yeah.
So there's no real question mark about that, which means it's sort of not an easy thing to go through.
Yeah.
So I think it's almost better to just leave that because we know where they're going. There's
Exactly.
no questions around them.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ideas as to how they already want to implement them because they're so close to their clubs. But the reason I wanted to bring up Cooper Duff-Tytler is for the exact opposite reason. His team still doesn't seem set.
Nope.
And there's many reasons why. One, players in his class have shot up above him, Dersma specifically. Duff-Tytler has been the projected number one pick at some times, but has found himself in this position where scouts are starting to see problems with not necessarily his skill, but more his fit, because he's almost too small to be a dominant ruck, but he isn't enough of a threatening forward to play a key forward role, I think was the words you would use to me.
So his ruck work in terms of his size is decent. Like, he's got the body of a ruckman for the future. When you consider the AFL are changing the rules, they want a more athletic profile. They want someone who can run and jump. That is what Duff-Tytler will be. But when you consider he's not that great with his tap work, he isn't that great as a key forward. And there's been moments where you don't know if he is going to be a ruckman or if he's going to be a key forward. And that's the question. It's going to be based off of the team, how they want to develop him. A lot of what I've heard is that he's going to be similar to a Luke Jackson, where he's not really a full-time ruck, but he's also not really a forward. He's very much a mesh of those. I see him more as like a younger version of Tim English, where you look at that 2021 season where he started to properly play every week. He was sitting next to Stephen Martin every week. He would start forward, but then Martin would play 60%, more than 60% of the game. So then English would then take his role. I think that's closest to what CDT will be than a Luke Jackson. I think it's more of that athletic profile around the ground rather than that just pure leaper.
CDT. I don't know why I didn't notice that as a nickname straight away. It's such an easy one to point out. I don't know how I missed it, but his snapshot is choosing to pursue a career in Aussie rules over basketball, which makes sense. 200 centimetres can get you far in basketball, but gets you much further in footy. He's an exciting prospect who has the capability to revolutionise the way the ruck role is played with his movement and ability to cover the ground. But this is a quote from Adrian Dixon. That is a big, big ask of him to revolutionise the ruck role. It's almost banking on the idea that, sure, he's not made to be a traditional ruck now, but what if he thrives in his own way? And so his role and his potential is a massive question mark that we'll just have to wait and see as to whether it is enough to make him a dominant force in the league.
I think there are chances he is probably the biggest slider of the draft, simply because of the fact that teams don't know whether he is a full-time ruckman or whether he will be a genuine key forward. And do you want to take one of those positions at pick 2 or 3 in the draft? That's sort of where I would think the issue with his capability at AFL level comes from.
Yeah, and we'll leave it there for Cooper because there's so many more questions we can answer towards the end. And the final player I want to go through in this segment is Sullivan Roby.
Bolt.
He has been a bolter that some of the words that we use or some of the quotes were, we haven't seen it since Clayton Oliver.
Mm-hmm.
That is a big name
2015
to be compared to.
Yep.
A massive bolt. He was unprojected for a long time, and then towards the back end of the season with the Eastern Rangers, just absolutely just shocked everyone with how impactful he was. He was struggling to get himself games at his previous club, wasn't he?
Yeah, so I think it was the Dandenong Rangers that he was cut from at the start of the year. He was 175 centimeters at the start of last year. He's now 192.
That's insane.
Like
that's
potential.
a second puberty. That's the exciting part about when you're looking at the draft is watching people completely transform as prospects. That's what's so exciting.
And it's nuts to think that if he was still 100, let's say 182, just a regular, his body would be AFL size. His body is still AFL size at 192 centimeters. The one thing I look at him is that he will be able to deal with the physicality at AFL level from day dot. And that's what I really like about him as a prospect. He's going to be able to play that half forward midfield role, exactly what Murphy Reid did. But Murphy Reid isn't that quick. Neither is Roby. However, he can play full-time midfield almost from day dot. And I think that really suits him and what makes him so enticing as a prospect.
Yeah, so I'm reading just here, originally cut by the Dandenong Stingrays at under 16 level. A growth spurt and strong form on the local scene put Roby back on the map. So
I'm pretty sure he had
just know, kids, even as a kid growing into the league, you can still find a way to completely wow the recruiters. The dream is never over. And so it's really exciting to watch.
Yes, positive race.
What's wrong with that?
Being a monk. It's never over, kids. You can never give up on your dreams.
Yeah, exactly.
Monk race.
It's really, it's revolutionary stuff I'm saying here.
A
powerful, physically imposing midfielder forward who hits hard and can impact the scoreboard, says Michael Alvaro. This is a bloke who I'm really, really excited to see his career get started. And from what it looks like, he could see himself getting a cheeky top 3. I've seen some people put him as high as the 3rd spot. And I really think he could come out of this draft as one of the best. Obviously, now that he's drafted, he's gone up so high, but he's got everything. He has got everything. And the best part about these types of players is that they've worked on certain skills from a certain body type, archetype, from a certain skill set. And then when they grow into a bigger body, they've got all those, small in and under skills that you struggle to find with those bigger players who've been tall their entire life, right? He's going to be one of those larger players who have those small player athleticism like sparks, right? So I'm excited to see how this guy continues to improve throughout his AFL career. And whoever gets him, I think, is going to be very, very lucky.
Oh, yeah, 100%. He's going to be a gun.
Yeah. So those are the 3 that I had highlighted. Is there anyone else that you wanted to give a quick point out to?
There's a couple that I really like as prospects.
Yep.
I think someone like Lockie Doverston as a pure small forward had a ridiculous season this year. There's been a lot of play comps to Nick Watson due to his size and the position he plays. Watson has that ability to potentially play in the midfield, even though he doesn't have that size. But Doverston was a better goal scorer in his draft year than what Watson was, and Watson went pick 6. I think there is every chance a team really wants to go for him, and maybe a team like Richmond who want to get a genuine game winner could very well take him at pick 5 or what potentially becomes pick 6.
Hell.
I think they'd seriously consider him, and I'm really high on this kid. I think he's got absolute game-breaking potential.
Lockie Doverston. All right. That's a name to think of because, I'm looking at this right here. I'm looking a little bit into the future, and pick 5 is not where you have put him. That is nowhere near where you've put him, but I'm really interested to see.
There is another one being not Javon Philippou, Josh Lindsay. I think he has potential of being that halfback flanker who develops into a pure midfielder.
Yep.
When you consider the likes of Naz, Hayden Bolton,
Hayden Young, are you speaking
I
of?
was about to say Shay Young, and then I went to Hayden Bolton. Yeah, okay.
But
So
no,
Hayden Young,
Hayden
Ed
Young-
Richards, Jordan Dawson started that. I think he's of that ilk. And I think great kick, can hit a target,
Yeah.
punishable.
I remember Hayden Young
punishes teams.
specifically. There was a game where it was like a championship game, Vic Metro versus whoever it was at the time. It could have been Vic Country. I can't remember. But he had a kick in the last like 2 or 3 minutes of the game, a left foot kick from one side to the other that just bolstered, just completely exploded his draft stock all the way to the top, or really, really high up compared to where he was because of a kick like that in such an important game. So I'm really interested to see, are there any more opportunities at all for these guys to shot up? The seasons have completely come to a finish, so there's no more chances for them to continue to impress. I think they've all been through their draft combine, stuff like that. But I'm really looking out for those players with devastating kicks because those guys are those game changers that you mentioned. But I want to now go into a few phantom drafts because those will give you an idea, not to say that it's going to happen, but it'll give you an idea as to one, how each of their forms are going, and two, where teams are expected to be picking up certain
I
players.
feel like we can also talk about what teams need with their picks at this stage.
Absolutely.
Because that sort of tells you what they might go for as
Yeah.
well.
And if that's the case, I want to take you to. I hate that you dissed ESPN so much because I'm about
Hey.
to use their draft power rankings.
No, please don't.
Don't?
No, don't use Rookie Me Central or any other place but ESPN.
But ESPN, easy. I don't know why I put them in there. Rookie Me
ESPN are
Central
dog
power
shit.
rankings. I can do that for you.
Even
absolutely.
Zero Hanger have better shit.
No, Zero Hanger had North Melbourne picking Cooper Duff Titler somehow. They said that we were going to trade with Hawthorn.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if you do.
Really?
Yeah.
I would be very surprised if we managed to get Cooper Duff Titler.
They have them falling, but like I still think that's better than ESPN.
Yeah, I guess so. Fair enough. All right, let me have a look at the power rankings here. AFL Draft power rankings. All
I've
right.
got the September one and I've got Cartoomies.
Okay, so I've got here Willem Dersmer at 1 is expected to be number 1. We've also got Zeke Hewlin 2, CDT at 3, Dylan Patterson 4, Dan Annabelle 5. That is about what I expect, and I think about the same as Cal Toomey at this point.
The top 5 is Willem Dersmer and then a mix of the 4, 3 of those being NGA players.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we know who the top 5 is.
Yeah, the top 5 seems
At least
pretty
power
locked in.
rankings-wise.
Again, I had seen people seeing Sullivan Roby get pretty high. So
Yes, in Cows they've got Roby at 6, which I think is a fair jump. I don't know if teams rate him that highly, but given he hasn't put it together for a full season, but he has had games where he's had 40 and 3 goals,
yeah,
which is ridiculous, and then followed it up with 25 touches. So like when he got the opportunity, he really shone.
Xavier Taylor is listed number 6.
You're a big
on
fan of
Rookie
this
Me.
man.
I really like, and this is the guy I want us to actually try and trade up for. I don't see him or CDT falling to 13, hence why I don't know why we try and do that trade. But if we could find our way to get Xavier Taylor, I'd be extremely happy. Sorry to bring North Melbourne into this, but yeah, Xavier Taylor he just looks like a quintessential building block for any team looking to improve their defense. I think there's going to be teams who need the experience to make him better. So it is very dependent. I think his career is very dependent on which team he lands at, not just in terms of whether he wins or not, but whether he improves as a player. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes. I think Melbourne wouldn't be a bad landing spot if he were to go there. I think with this, he's expected to go to Richmond.
I feel like Richmond wouldn't want to take him given they took Luke Traynor last year.
That's fair.
And he was a top prospect before his concussion issues.
Well, then that leaves Essendon.
I would feel that Essendon would go for him if the fact that someone doesn't play halfback anymore, being Redmond or McGrath.
Yep.
And Nick Martin. All 3 can't play off halfback, and then you bring in Taylor as well. That couldn't work.
Well, I think that Xavier Taylor, because Nick Martin's out all next year.
Yeah,
So Xavier Taylor could potentially take one of Redmond's spots, and then Nick Martin with a bit of a warm-up into a full-time midfield role. I think Nick Martin has that in him. Whether he's effective in there with his disposal efficiency, we'll find out. But Xavier Taylor, I think, is just going to be a really, really helpful, maybe not immediately helpful, but such a high upside.
I would bank on him being a Nick Floston 2.0.
Yeah.
Or a Tom Stewart type of player.
But I think the one who's even better than him is the guy next to him on this rookie
Dean?
me, Harry Dean.
Yeah.
He is going to be a Carlton player. This
Mhm.
is a father-son. He's the first father-son in this draft. And there's a reason I love his nickname. It's the teacher because he marks everything. It's so good. It is so good.
Jesus
It's got
Christ.
the dad joke energy.
Could
That's
you
so
imagine calling someone the teacher? That's so weird. Let's call him like Teach or something.
Call him Unk at that point, bro.
Sir?
Call him Unk at that point. There's no reason to like go halfway with it. You just call him Unk. But Harry Dean is a little bit taller, not too much to really affect it, but like his nickname says, he is such an effective intercept marker from his time at the Murray Bushrangers. And with Carlton, he's going to be learning behind Jacob Wiedering. I
It's
know
pretty good.
Wiedering is a fantastic person to learn from. Wiedering is a lot more of a one-on-one, not an intercept marker per se.
He will allow Dean to play as that interceptor from day one, which
Dean
I
is
think will
set up-
only help his game improve.
Dean is set up for a fantastic
Yeah.
rookie season, and
When-
he's going to be one to look out for in the Rising Stars, I reckon.
He doesn't have the size to be able to play like a Jacob Wiedering, where he's not 198 plus,
Exactly.
and he won't play on those genuine key position plays. The thing for him is, does he want to be a second defender or a third interceptor?
Yeah.
And I think he will be better suited as that third interceptor, where he can read the ball really well, where he does not have that athleticism to where he can jump and take a high flying mark. And I think he suits really well alongside Wiedering and alongside someone like Harry O'Farrell, who will sort of take that second key spot. And then you got also Nick Haynes, who can sort of teach him exactly what Nick Haynes was.
Yeah.
Which was that interceptor, doesn't need to really lock down, but can when needed to. And I think he's, very similar to Nick Haynes, or even like a B-Tech James Cicelo.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to watch him get started at Carlton. Sullivan Roby is projected here for rookie me at 8. Again, he's the one who excites me the most in terms of highest upside. I think Dersma will probably have the highest upside from the initial day dot. It's pretty consensus, but Sullivan Roby, I think, could be up there too. I think he is just going to be a look at what team. Again, it's another one of those picks where what team he goes to will decide how good he gets. I think if he goes to Essendon, I don't see much happening there. They just don't have the support system around him, it feels like, to really turn him into anything too fantastic. I think he'd find himself as a forward more often than a midfielder to start himself off. So it's interesting to see how he'd fit in that position. I just don't think he would be able to find himself thriving in any of those positions. He'd be okay. Richmond, there's opportunity a lot of the places at Richmond. And then Melbourne as well. Also, Melbourne feels like a bit of a tough spot. For 8, I feel like Sullivan Roby could have a tough time getting started, but there's a reason he bolted. And I think, the fact that his upside is so high, I really do believe could be a reason he becomes so good.
He seems to be one who could fluctuate pretty significantly on draft boards.
Yeah.
Where there are people who think he could go top 3. There are people who think, he'll probably stay more later top 10, where he could go maybe 7th to Essendon, like you said. I just think he's such an interesting prospect. That's the thing. I'm really a big fan of him because I think he's got that body. He's also slightly younger. He's born in October, which sort of helps his case a little bit as well when you consider that, which might be why he grew that extra little bit. I just think, if I'm Essendon, do I need another type of that player? We saw what happened with Perkins. We've already got Setterfield. We've got Durham. We kept Merritt. We're going to have Martin hopefully being there. We just delisted Ben Hobbs. We still got Elijah Tsatas. Do we need that sort of player? That's my only concern with Essendon.
Yeah.
When you're going to get a couple of players as well, like Adam Swede and El Akbar later in the draft, I'd just be concerned that you're getting too many similar sort of positional players.
Yeah. We'll go to the end of the top 10 to start this off, and more names will pop up as we go through, but I'll just keep it to the top 10 for rookie me. Dyson Sharp is projected number 9.
Yep.
He himself is a midfielder, a name you haven't probably heard very much.
No, people know Dyson Sharp. He was the captain for the South Australian team that ended up winning. I think they beat Vic Country in the end, and he had a great season throughout for the SA teams. And I think there are questions about where he's going to play, if he's going to be a full-time midfielder or if he's going to have to play split forward midfield. But I think he showed he can damage forward of the ball, which I think really helps, because you look at the likes of Degoe, Petrarca, Dusty, Bont, those players who can play midfield but also damage forward of the ball is the exact type of player you want. So I think for him, there's just questions. I mean, he's a great leader as well, so what you're getting with him. It's just whether you can develop him and mold him into that type of player.
Yeah, well, you really shut me up with my no one knows about him.
People know
comment.
him. Anyone in the top 10 people know.
Yeah, I just don't know what I'm talking about. That's
No,
why
exactly.
you're the draft man. You're the draft man.
No. Well, I think let's go through the top 10, 11 teams and see what each team would need.
Yeah.
Because I think when you consider it for West Coast, because obviously the top 8 teams are going to make or break this draft. They're going to be the ones who decide what every other team are going to be able to deal with. And considering it is 2, 2, 2, 2, and then 1, 1, 1.
Yeah.
Which can't have 2. Which, when you consider it later.
It's 2, 2, 2, and then it turns from that initial through all the bids into like 1, and then add in, and then 2, and then the next guy goes 1, then add in, then 2. It's like it's a whole mess, but I promise you, it makes sense. It does all make sense. It's just you got to understand the whole bidding system, the whole NGAs and father sons, all that type of stuff. That's just the thing you got to understand. But
so, what do you think West Coast's biggest list need is?
Well, if they're getting Dersma, they probably won't need to start reaching for any more midfielders. I'm still really high on CDT. I still think CDT has a role within West Coast to be really impactful. So hearing all the news about West Coast wanting to move their pick to someone else has me worried that maybe CDT has been a bit overhyped and whether he's just going to turn into... Because if he ends up being a backup to Bailey Williams, no disrespect to Bailey Williams, I just do not believe that he is a long-term option for them in the ruck position. And if CDT is playing second fiddle to him, then he's going to need a move to forward.
My only concern with that is you did take Archer Reid recently in the draft as well. And I think he's got pretty good upside, who we don't know if he's going to be a ruck or a forward. And I think with the questions about CDT, you're going to have to take that in consideration as well.
Yeah.
And you did just trade in Matt Flynn a couple of years ago. So I think there's... Obviously, he'd be a great fit alongside them. And I think when you're considering him as a ruckman, it'd be a great fit. But I just think there's going to be some questions around who they've already taken recently as well.
So do you think that... Because the two people who come up to me and in my head from this point are Sullivan, Roby and Xavier Taylor.
Okay.
What do you think they need more? Do you think they could use that spark that Roby maybe brings as a half-forward mid-rotation? Or do you think that Xavier Taylor is a good option in the back line?
They need kicking. They need really good ball use. And they also need some defensive capabilities, even bringing in Brandon Starcevich. On top of that, I think... they still really need. So I'd consider going for someone like Josh Lindsay, who I said before. I would also consider someone like Sam Grill, even though he's a Vic Metro boy and there's only, I think, 2 of them on their entire list. I still think that speed and that X factor that he does have really separates that midfield when you consider the likes of Hewitt and Reid. I think he sort of provides something else that is going to be hard for teams to stop. But I think I wouldn't be surprised if they go for a Harry Dean bid. I wouldn't be surprised at all because they need that key defender. I think kicking's their biggest issue. They just need some better ball use.
We'll have to wait and see. I think there's a lot of... It's really exciting to know that West Coast can go many different ways. They aren't that compromised compared to the rest of the other teams.
It's also why I think they'll go for Jacob Farah later in the draft,
Yeah,
who I am a big fan of as well.
Beautiful. So then we move to Richmond, who have the next 2 picks technically. They are in a tough spot as well because they will presumably have to deal with Zeke Hewland going above them. Would they? I don't think CDT fits with them at all.
No, when you consider what they drafted last year, they took 3 key forwards and one who was considered a forward ruck in Thomas Sims, Jonty Fall and Harry Armstrong. So I think they're very much on the side of maybe we can go for some outside players to help combat the likes of who they've got in their midfield, being Taranto, Hopper at the moment, and then what will be Lawler and Houghton in the future. So again, Sam Grill, I think for them, really provides a point of difference in that midfield. You've also got Smiley, and I think those 4 would mesh absolutely perfectly. Big-bodied, outside player, someone around the ground and then someone forward half in Lawler. I think that would suit them absolutely perfectly. And then their other player, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they go for maybe another outside player. Maybe you could reach for an Oscar Taylor.
Yeah.
Who absolutely bolted his stock in the combine and finished top 10 in both the sprint and the 2K time trial, and which is just phenomenal endurance from him. My God, what an athlete. But yeah, in terms of outside, I think that's their key weakness. Again, similar to West Coast, but I think West Coast is kicking. Richmond is more outside ball use for them, which is or a point of difference just in general.
Yeah. You had mentioned before that the Eagles would have a tough time bringing... Was it Sam Grill you had mentioned, who's the Vic Metro boy?
Mm-hmm.
This time, on the other side of things, Essendon's up next.
Yeah.
And they actually have a bit of that to their advantage, especially when you're thinking about CDT, who's coming up again.
Yeah. Played for the Quarter Cannons. Yeah.
Yeah, Quarter Cannons, Vic Metro boy. A lot of people, including myself, I think at this point, see him going to Essendon. I think Essendon are going to try and take him and see whether he's got the upside they're looking for. On top of that, who else could they possibly need? I mean, backline.
What don't Essendon need?
Realistic. Midfield is maybe. I think
So-
they've got a lot of midfield.
They've got a
talent
lot
per
of
se, on
shit
paper.
midfield depth.
Yeah.
'Cause I also got Jai Caldwell, who is that exact player as Sullivan Roby as well. I think they obviously need height. And when you consider someone you want to pair alongside Nate Caddy, absolutely you want to pair him with CDT. Sam Draper left. Todd Goldstein, you're delisted. They're going to need some height. I wouldn't be surprised if they go for Xavier Taylor and CDT. Those would be my two.
Would you potentially think of an Aiden Schubert? Do you think he could fit?
I would. If CDT isn't on the board, I'd absolutely consider him. Fantastic season from him. He was a big body, averaged a really high amount of touches as well for a key forward, which is what you want to see. Someone gets involved.
Yeah.
Averaged, I think, close to 7 score involvements for the year and kicked basically 2 goals a game. What more could you ask from a key forward prospect? Has that size where he can maybe play backup rock. Maybe you wouldn't want that for someone who's still a bit skinny, but he just get involved. And I think as a key forward option, he'd certainly work. Basically replaces what Peter Wright did.
Yeah.
Like exactly. So I think as a young player would work well.
And then for Melbourne, looking at their list, I think it's the back line where they're going to need to make... and I think is where they're going to go.
So long as Harrison Petty moves back, I don't care.
But
not
considering they have told Stephen May he's going to be playing a lot of VFL footy next year...
They'd have to move him back.
Yeah.
They'd have to.
Then I'm assuming they're going to be trying to bring in some backline talent. Correct?
Potentially with the loss of John McVie on top of that. I think they look like their midfield is relatively good already when you consider the likes of Xavier Lindsay, Harvey Langford, Caleb Windsor's playing a bit in there as well. Jack Viney in the short term should help. Trent Rivers and Cosy Pickett sort of will be playing more time, I'm assuming, next year, which, given they've got Stephen King, he should be able to be smart enough to do. I feel like another small forward would certainly help, considering Pickett will go into the midfield. You're losing Petrarca, who played forward at times. You lost Charlie Spargo, who played for a small forward role. So someone like Lockie Doverston or even Pickett's cousin in Latrell Pickett, I think that'd absolutely...
That would work out quite well, yeah.
It'd be a good family tie to keep Pickett there.
Yeah.
Because I could absolutely see rumours of him leaving.
Yep.
So I think I wouldn't be surprised if they reach on that, or maybe trade back and then take him maybe with a pick late in the teens. Aside from that, I still think they might need one more midfielder.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't be surprised if they go for someone like... I feel like they'd stay away from Ollie Greaves, given they just traded away Clayton Oliver, when you consider that in an underplayer. But Dyson Sharp would be one for me, good leader as well, or even Noah Hibbins-Hargreaves, who's that also forward half player.
Yeah. I think if they could find a way to get Xavier Taylor here as well, I think that could be a really nice addition.
A lot of these top prospects you'd like anywhere, to be fair.
That is true. I'm
yeah,
just
in
trying to
terms of-
think in the perspective of where will they thrive the most. And I
If-
think for them, if Dyson Sharp were to find his way to Melbourne, he'd struggle to get out of the blocks well. Maybe with his surroundings and the leadership around him being alongside Max Gawn within that midfield, and then also growing
Also
alongside
got Jack Steele. Forgot that.
was it Xavier Lindsay?
Xavier Lindsay and
from
Harvey
Melbourne?
Langford.
Yeah, he had a fantastic first year, so growing alongside him could really benefit him too. But I'm just thinking, do they want to go to try and build up that young talent and then bring in that backline talent later on where they have a bit more experience there and they can teach the young guys the reins.
I feel like, Petty, Lever, and Daniel Turner as the 3, I think is fine. So maybe not Taylor. Maybe you could go for that for someone later in the draft. But I feel like a good midfielder will help, and then maybe a forward half player, whether that's a small forward, whether that's a key. I think they'll have to wait and see.
I was going to say, a lot of it is just waiting to see what clubs prioritize the most out of all of it, because what we've just said is a whole lot of they probably could use anyone anywhere. That's kind of how it goes with really poor teams. But with that being said, though, that is a lot of speculation. We're going to have many more weeks to talk about this stuff as we get closer and closer to draft day. So I appreciate you guys tuning into episode number 36 of Zero Access Footy. Hopefully you guys will join us along next week to get a look at what the rumours and speculation look like as to the finalised version of the draft. So I appreciate you guys coming in again and watching through. Be sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and follow us on all platforms. And I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.
Peace.